Aurelia Delacourt loved her beach house more than any place in the world. It wasn't just a house. It was where she and her late husband had spent summers watching sunsets, laughing over wine, and making memories with their son Eamon. When Aurelia got sick and spent weeks in the hospital, the thought of seeing the ocean again kept her strong. On a warm afternoon, still a bit weak but determined, Aurelia decided to visit the house. She drove along the familiar coastal road, smiling as the sea breeze hit her face. But when she turned onto the driveway, her smile froze. There were cars she didn't recognize parked outside. The front door was wide open. She stepped out of her car and saw strangers carrying boxes inside, as if they were moving in. "Excuse me," Aurelia called, her voice shaky. A man turned to her, polite but confused. "Can I help you?" "Yes," Aurelia said, her heart pounding. "This is my house. What are you doing here?" The man frowned. "Your house? We bought this house last month. We just got the keys today." For a moment, Aurelia couldn't breathe. "That's not possible," she whispered. "I never sold this house." But the man was already showing her paperwork. The names on it nearly made Aurelia's knees give way. Eamon Graydon and Rowena Dalebrook. Her son. Her daughter-in-law. She backed away from the door, feeling like the world had tilted beneath her. Her chest tightened as if she couldn't get enough air. "Eamon sold my house. He sold it without even telling me." Aurelia stumbled back to her car, her hands shaking so badly she could barely turn the key in the ignition. She drove straight to the county records office, her mind racing. No, maybe it's a mistake. Maybe it's fake. There must be some explanation. But when the clerk pulled up the file, the truth hit like a knife. The deed had been transferred legally, or at least it looked legal. There was her name crossed out and Eamon's forged signature where hers should have been. For a long moment, Aurelia just stood there, staring at the screen. Then something inside her hardened. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply said, "Print me a copy of that deed." On the drive back, the memories of her son came rushing in. His first steps in the beach house hallway, his laughter on the deck as a boy, the way he used to say it was the only place in the world that felt like magic. And now he had sold it. For money. Behind her back. By the time she got home, the heartbreak had turned into quiet rage. She sat down at the dining table and spread the papers out, her fingers tracing over the forged signature. "They think I won't fight back," she thought. "They think I'm too weak, too old, too sick to do anything about it." She picked up the phone and dialed Mr. Whitcomb, her lawyer. "Mr. Whitcomb," she said, her voice calm but ice cold. "I need you to come by first thing in the morning. It's about the beach house. Eamon sold it, and I want it back." That night, Aurelia sat by the window, staring out at the dark street, her hands clenched around a cup of tea that had long gone cold. Betrayal burned in her chest, but beneath it was something sharper, resolve. She wasn't just going to take the house back. She was going to make sure Eamon and Rowena never forgot what they did. And as the waves crashed miles away at the beach house, Aurelia Delacourt began to plan her revenge. The morning sun spilled through Aurelia Delacourt's curtains, but she hadn't slept. She sat at the kitchen table with the forged deed laid out in front of her. Every time she looked at Eamon's name written in place of hers, it felt like another stab to the heart. She had raised him, given him everything she could, and this was how he repaid her. A knock at the door broke her thoughts. She opened it to find Mr. Whitcomb, her lawyer of 20 years, standing there with his leather briefcase. His face was calm, but the moment he saw the papers on the table, his expression darkened. "Let me guess," he said, adjusting his glasses. "This wasn't your decision." "No," Aurelia said firmly. Her voice was steadier than she felt. "I would never sell that house. My husband built it with his own hands. It's the one thing I swore I'd protect." Mr. Whitcomb sat down and scanned the documents. "The signatures are sloppy. Whoever forged this thought no one would notice. But with a handwriting expert, we can prove it's fake." Aurelia clenched her hands together. "It was Eamon. And Rowena. I don't just want it undone. I want them to know what they did can't be forgiven." Whitcomb looked at her, then nodded slowly. "We can file a fraud claim. If the court sees this, the sale will be void. But Aurelia, this will tear the family apart." Her jaw tightened. "They already did that when they betrayed me. They worked together for hours." Whitcomb made copies of the deed, highlighted the inconsistencies, and pulled records showing Aurelia's long ownership of the house. He filed emergency paperwork to freeze the sale until a hearing could be held. By late afternoon, Aurelia's dining table was covered in files, stamps, and notes. For the first time since yesterday, she felt like she could breathe again. But her heart still hurt. She thought about Eamon as a boy, building sandcastles on that very beach, running up to her with wet hair and a smile that could light up the world. She whispered to herself, what happened to that boy? Where did he go? The phone rang, startling her. It was Sheriff Cormac Ridley. I received notice of a possible fraudulent property transfer, he said. I'll need to see the documents in person. Of course, Aurelia replied. I'll bring them tomorrow. But Sheriff, I want to be there when they find out. There was a pause on the line. Then Sheriff Ridley said, You're tougher than most. I'll make sure you have your chance. After hanging up, Aurelia walked to her bedroom. On her dresser was a framed photograph of her husband, smiling with his arm around her, the ocean behind them. She touched the glass gently. They thought they could steal our memories, she whispered. But I won't let them. That night, Rowena called. Aurelia stared at the phone for a long moment before answering. Mother, Rowena began, her tone sickly sweet. I heard you've been asking questions about the house. You don't need to worry. We only did what was best for the family. The family? Aurelia's voice was like ice. Selling my house behind my back? Forging my name? That's not family, Rowena. That's theft. Rowena laughed softly, a cold laugh. You're old, Aurelia. You wouldn't understand. Eamon and I have plans. That house was wasted on you. Now it's giving us the future we deserve. Aurelia's hand shook, but her words were steady. Enjoy this future while you can. Tomorrow, I'm taking everything back. Rowena's laughter died instantly. What do you mean? But Aurelia hung up without another word. She stood at the window again that night, the moon casting silver light across the street. Her heart was heavy, but her will was iron. Tomorrow she would walk into that house, not as a victim, but as the rightful owner. And when she looked into Eamon and Rowena's eyes, they would see not weakness, but the fury of a mother betrayed. The next morning, Aurelia Delacourt dressed carefully. She chose a dark navy coat, simple but strong, the kind of clothing that made her feel steady. In her hand she carried the folder of documents Mr. Whitcomb had prepared. The original deed, the proof of fraud, and the emergency order signed by the court. Sheriff Cormac Ridley met her outside the courthouse. He was tall, quiet, with a steady look in his eyes. Are you ready for this? He asked. Aurelia's voice did not shake. More ready than they think I am. Together, they drove down the coastal road toward the beach house. The waves were crashing loudly that morning, as if the ocean itself knew what was about to happen. When they turned into the driveway, Aurelia saw them, Eamon and Rowena. They were standing on the porch with smug smiles, champagne glasses in hand. Behind them, movers carried more boxes inside. Rowena was laughing at something Eamon said. But when she spotted the sheriff's car pulling up, her smile faded. When Aurelia stepped out, holding the folder close to her chest, both their faces drained of color. Mother, Eamon said slowly, setting his glass down. What are you doing here? Aurelia looked at him for a long time. Her son, the boy she had raised, now standing in front of her like a stranger. You sold my house, she said, her voice sharp but controlled. And today you're going to watch me take it back. Rowena stepped forward quickly, trying to cover the panic in her eyes with arrogance. This isn't your house anymore, Aurelia. The papers are signed. It's ours now. Aurelia didn't look at her. Instead, she handed the folder to Sheriff Ridley. He opened it, scanned the documents, and then addressed the group firmly. This sale was fraudulent. The signature was forged. By order of the court, this property returns to Mrs. Delacourt immediately. Gasps rippled through the small crowd of movers and neighbors who had gathered outside, curious about the scene. Rowena's voice cracked as she tried to argue. This can't be legal. We had every right. Sheriff Ridley cut her off. You had no right. And unless you want me to put you in cuffs today, I suggest you step aside. Eamon looked like he had been struck. He turned to his mother, his voice shaking now. Mother, please. We only did this for us. For the future. You don't understand. Aurelia's eyes filled with tears, but she did not let them fall. The future? You sold my memories, Eamon. You sold the place your father built with his own hands. And you thought I'd never find out. Do you know what that makes you? Not my son. Not anymore. Rowena reached for him, whispering, Don't listen to her. We'll fight this. But before she could finish, Aurelia's lawyer, Mr. Whitcomb, arrived and stepped onto the porch. The fight is already over, he announced, his calm voice carrying across the crowd. The deed is back in Mrs. Delacourt's name. And the Northbridge Consortium, the so-called buyers, are withdrawing today. They've been informed of the fraud, and they're pressing charges for damages. The movers stopped carrying boxes. The neighbors exchanged whispers. And Eamon's face turned ashen. No, Rowena whispered. Her hands trembled as she looked from Aurelia to the sheriff. No, this can't be happening. But Aurelia stepped forward, her voice steady. It is happening. Right now. And you're going to walk away with nothing. Sheriff Ridley motioned for the movers to stop. Everyone out. This property is secured for Mrs. Delacourt. The movers filed past quietly, some of them shaking their heads at Eamon and Rowena. The champagne glasses sat abandoned on the porch, the celebration cut short. Rowena broke then. She dropped to her knees, grabbing at Aurelia's coat. Please, don't do this. Don't ruin us. We needed that money. Aurelia stepped back, her face like stone. You ruined yourselves when you chose betrayal over honesty. I will not save you from the consequences. Eamon stood frozen, his fists clenched, his face pale with humiliation. For the first time, he couldn't find words. He just stared at his mother as the sheriff guided everyone off the property. The driveway emptied. The neighbors drifted away. And finally, Aurelia stood alone on the porch of her reclaimed beach house. The ocean air filled her lungs, and for the first time in days, she felt steady. But as she looked out at the horizon, she knew this was not the end. She had taken her house back, but her revenge was not complete. There was still one final step, one cut deeper than they could imagine. She whispered into the wind, "They thought they could steal my past. Now I'll take away their future." 3 nights later, Aurelia Delacourt set the long dining table in her home. The candles were lit, the silverware polished, and a heavy silence hung in the air. She had invited Eamon and Rowena for dinner, but not out of kindness. Tonight, she would end everything. When the doorbell rang, Aurelia opened it to find them standing there. Rowena's eyes were red, as if she had been crying for days. Eamon looked pale and defeated, but there was still a flicker of hope in his expression. Hope that his mother had softened. "Mother," Eamon said quietly. "Thank you for seeing us." Aurelia gave no answer. She simply gestured for them to come in. They sat down at the table. For a while, nobody spoke. The clinking of cutlery was the only sound. Rowena finally broke the silence. "Aurelia, we know we made mistakes. But you can't just cut us off. We're family." Aurelia's eyes were sharp. Family doesn't stab you in the back. Family doesn't sell your home and forge your name. What you did wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. Rowena's face twisted, but she tried again. "We were desperate. We thought we could handle it. Please don't destroy us." Eamon reached across the table, his voice breaking. "Mother, I know you're angry. But you're all we have left. Don't throw us away." Aurelia stood slowly. Her chair scraped against the floor. She walked to a side cabinet and returned with a folder. The same one she had carried to the beach house. But inside was something new. "I asked you here tonight," Aurelia said, placing the folder on the table, "because you need to hear the truth directly from me." She opened it and pulled out a single document. Her voice was steady as she read aloud. "This is my new will. Effective immediately, all of my assets, my houses, my investments, everything I own, will no longer pass to my son Eamon Graydon or his wife, Rowena Dalebrook. Instead, my estate will go to the Delacourt Foundation, a charity supporting children without families." Her words fell into the silence like a blade. Rowena's fork clattered to the floor. "What?" she whispered. Eamon's face turned white. "Mother, no. You can't mean that." "I mean every word," Aurelia said coldly. "I gave you my love, my trust, and my loyalty, and you tried to steal everything from me. So I'm taking away the only thing you care about, your future." Rowena's hands shook as she grabbed the document. No, this isn't real. You wouldn't do this." "I already did," Aurelia replied. "Signed and notarized this morning." Eamon pushed back his chair violently, standing with tears in his eyes. "You're destroying me. You're destroying your own son." Aurelia's voice wavered for the first time, but she didn't stop. "No, Eamon. You destroyed yourself the moment you chose greed over love. You destroyed yourself when you decided money was worth more than family." Rowena buried her face in her hands, sobbing. "All that money gone, all gone." Eamon stared at his mother, his jaw tight, rage and heartbreak burning in his eyes. Finally, without another word, he stormed out of the house, the front door slamming behind him. Rowena stayed for a moment longer, trembling, her voice cracking as she begged. "Please, Aurelia, don't do this. Don't ruin us completely. Aurelia's expression did not soften. I didn't ruin you. You ruined yourselves. And now you'll have to live with what you did. Rowena's sobs echoed as she ran after her husband, leaving Aurelia alone in the dining room. The silence returned, heavy but peaceful this time. Aurelia gathered the will, closed the folder, and blew out the candles one by one. She walked to the window and looked out at the night sky. The stars glimmered faintly, the ocean whispered in the distance, and for the first time in weeks, her heart felt calm. Yes, she had lost her son. Yes, the wound of betrayal would never fully heal. But she had taken back her power. She had shown them that betrayal has consequences. They thought they could steal my past, she whispered to herself. So I took away their future. And with that, Aurelia Delacourt turned away from the window, knowing the chapter of betrayal had ended, and she had written the final line.